Well, Razorback fans, I'm sure you've all had a great time playing EA Sports College Football 25. But where would the Hoop Hogs stack up if EA Sports decided to run it back with the college basketball game? We're going to talk about it here on the Lockdown Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Lockdown Razorbacks podcast, the Pod at the Palace edition. I am Curtis Wilkerson, joined again by Andrew Ellis, who just so happens to be our resident gamer here. But I'm not gonna lie, I was an avid gamer when I was growing up, and well into my adult years too. I do not have a PS5, and so I haven't really gotten to enjoy the college football game yet, man. But I don't know. I felt like I always leaned towards the college games over the pro games. I was more college football than I was Madden. I was more March Madness than I was 2K. I gotta say though, I had a soft spot in my heart, man, for the college basketball video games. I really did. There was nothing better when it came to being able to build your own schedule and get yourself in the Maui Invitational and go through the NCAA tournament, recruit players. All that stuff was a blast. I really, really, really love those games, and I miss them. I wish they would do it again. What say you?
I think it's, probably only a matter of time now. In the world, that's how these things work. When people just complain enough, things usually end up coming back. And so I never thought there would be a day where college football would be back in the video game. And now it's finally made its triumphant return. But yeah, I do feel like John is more of an actual gamer than I am. But when it comes to sports games, that's always been like growing up. My friends used to hate me because they would always try to get me to play Call of Duty and Halo and all this stuff. And I was like, I just want to play Madden. I just want to play 2K. I just want to play college football, whatever the case may be. And I was playing those college basketball games like nobody's business, man. Like that one that had Blake Griffin on the cover. KD was on the cover one year. Like that era, I was playing those games so aggressively. Do you remember they used to have the thing where it was like the tempo was a big deal? It was like either up tempo or like slow or balanced or whatever. And so it's like, I would always be checking the meter and I'm like, oh, we're going too fast. We're going too fast. We got to slow it down or whatever. Man, it's just, we probably if we watch those games now, we'd probably be like, oh, these are the worst graphics ever. But in the moment, it felt like it was the real deal, man. It was the best way to experience it. And so, yeah, I'm anxiously awaiting. I feel like one day they're going to have to bring those games back. I also used to love the college baseball video game. But,
I had that. Yeah,
man, even though the games have evolved over time and stuff, man, I still find myself missing those like 2008, 2009 era games.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I feel like it's only right that now that we've moved on into this NIL era, the college basketball game, it should come back too. Especially with the way that 2K has taken off, it feels like, March Madness 25 would be an absolute banger. But I do think it's probably too late for it to happen this year. We would have already heard about it, right? The season's right around the corner, maybe in the near future here, but I think we should live in fantasy land a little bit today, Andrew, because one of my favorite parts about this college football game coming back was being able to go and check out, well, where are the Arkansas Razorbacks, right among the other teams in the country? What about the players? Who's rated where? Who's the best at what position? That was always a blast. So basically, we're going to do EA Sports job for them and take care of this for the Razorbacks. I want to start, Andrew, with the team itself. I was looking at college football 25 and their top 25 power ratings that they have on the game. So number 1, Georgia was rated as a 95 overall. Number 25, Iowa, is an 87. So that range of top 25 from 87 to 95, if College Hoops create another video game and they operate in a similar fashion, I think you're looking at Arkansas being somewhere in that range, right? We both agree they're going to be a top 25 team, yeah?
Definitely. And I think, the one thing about John Calipari is even if you hate him and you want to knock him as a coach, over the years, you could never question his team's talent. I don't think talent is going to be in question for this Arkansas basketball roster, and we can get into all the pieces a little bit later. But I do think that regardless of where you actually think Arkansas is as a team, like if you think they're the 12th best team in the country or 18, 20, whatever, I feel like their video game rating will be higher, though, just because if you just look at the pieces, and that's what these games are, is just on paper, piece by piece, adding up all the attributes. You start doing the numbers and start thinking about all the guys and where they'd be ranked. I feel like Arkansas would be kind of, like you said, in that low 90s range, probably among the top 5 to 10 in terms of rating and talent. Even if we're not even convinced that Arkansas is going to be a top 10 team, which, we can have that argument at a later date. But I do feel like Arkansas just this roster in particular is almost built for the video game. And so I think back to a lot of the Cal rosters. And honestly, Curtis, it reminds me a little bit when I was playing 2K back in the day in the 2014-15 range, the New York Knicks teams with like Carmelo Anthony, J.R. Smith, Tyson Chandler at center and stuff. They were the team that they were never the best team in the NBA, but on 2K, it was like you almost would tell your friends you can't play with the Knicks. Like for that team, all their 3-and-D guys just rain threes, and their star players like Carmelo's obviously as skilled as any player in the game. And so it was like almost a cheat code. I feel like Arkansas basketball this year is kind of that team where I'm not saying they're going to win the national title. I don't even know if they're going to be a top 5 to 10 team, but I do think on the video game, they would be a lot of fun. I mean, we'll get into the pieces, but yeah, I feel like the team overall would be pretty high for this one.
Yeah, I think I would probably put them in that 89 to 91-ish range overall, which would probably put them right there where you're talking about, which would be pretty cool to see. And I like how they break it down. Obviously you get an offensive rating, a defensive rating. I kind of went through and nerded out a little bit on those college football numbers too. And so the top 25 offenses on the college football game range between 83 and 94. Okay, the top 25 defenses were between 84 and 96, so a little bit higher. I'm curious what you think about this, because I could see Arkansas being really high-powered offensively, but maybe struggling a little bit as a three-point shooting team that could limit their ceiling a little bit on some ratings like this. Defensively, I really like their rim protection. I think they could be elite on that end. I like a lockdown wing defender like a Duthiero, but I'm not so sold on the backcourt perimeter defense just yet. So I might have them rated actually a little bit lower on specific offense and defense than I do overall, just because I think the sheer talent of the players is so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the defense aspect, because that's another thing that people always kind of lose sight of, particularly in basketball. Obviously with football, if you're a receiver, they do all the ratings for everything. Like they do your kick power and all that, but it obviously doesn't affect your situation. But offense, defense matters. And I want everyone to keep that in mind when we discuss a Duthiero. But that's part of why I think Arkansas would be pretty fun for this game is they have a little bit of everything. They have their pieces. They have some shooting, maybe wouldn't be one of the highest 3-point shooting overall teams in the game, but people would be making it rain with Carter Knox. John L. Davis would be doing what he's got to do. And defensively, of course, there would be some question marks there. But I've noticed with the video games, being a gamer, with 2K usually is they give like offensive-minded players the benefit of the doubt a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like Steph Curry's defense, you'll never see it below like a B-, like C+. Not to say that, and Steph Curry's, a smart defender, knows what to do off the ball and all that, but it's like they give a little bit of the bump sometimes where they're just like, are we really going to judge John L. Davis's defense? No, we're not, and so I do think Arkansas would get some of the benefit of the doubt there. But yeah, I would imagine there's going to be some teams like a Bama or like a UConn who are maybe a little bit more well-rounded, overall balanced, have all the right pieces and everything. And so, I'm not sitting here saying, hey, Arkansas needs to be the highest rated team and all that. But I do think just skill for skill, if you go through this roster, I feel like Arkansas kind of has it all with this team.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And the other interesting thing about it, and they don't put actual, ratings for this, but I did see that college football put out the top 25 toughest places to play. I'm just going to say this right now. If Reynolds Razorback Stadium was number 22 in the country, Bud Walton Arena has got to be top 3. They just have to be top 3. No questions about it. No ifs, ands, or buts. Boom, point blank. Period. So we're going to get into the fun stuff here, though, with individual player ratings. Just stay tuned here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. It's fitting that we're talking about video games today, because I'm going to take a minute here to give you guys a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're really going to enjoy. It's called Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Could you imagine being the head coach of the Razorbacks? I think, like we said before, probably every Razorback fan out there is doing exactly that right now. But from recruiting players and hiring coaches and staff to overseeing training camps and handling scholarships, you control every critical detail of the program. It's all in your hands. Would you be able to handle the pressure, or would you fold under the pressure? Here's what I really love about the game. You're responsible for calling offensive plays during the games, and your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but it will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free. It has no ads, and it's 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we've got a special offer for you at Locked On here. Use the promo code Locked On CFB. That's in all caps, Locked On CFB, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com, or look it up in app stores. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, Andrew, from team ratings to player ratings, it's going to be fun. If we're ever fortunate enough to get EA Sports to run it back with this March Madness video game, we're going to be really excited. We're going to try to be as unbiased and realistic as humanly possible while we go through these, and we'll roll through them pretty quickly here. Andrew, you checked out the college football game, and you told me there are 107 players with a rating of 90 or above. Obviously, that's going to be way lower in a college hoops game because there's so many fewer players, right? I was able to get my eyes on March Madness 2006 of all games. There were just 10 players on that game that were rated over a 90 or above, and 15 that were at 88 or above. That was a little bit lower, wow, I think, than I even anticipated. So basically, back in the day, at least, you needed to be an All-American caliber player to get 90 or above. Do we agree that Nelly Davis is the guy who fits that mold for the Razorbacks?
Yeah, I think he does. And I think, you can make arguments for a couple other guys here. I mean, I think Jonas Adu is probably the most compelling out of, guys outside of Nelly Davis. But yeah, I think he falls into that low 90s range. And Nelly Davis is one of those guys who is just well-rounded enough as a scorer, as an offensive basketball player, to where I don't see why you couldn't cook with him on the game like crazy. I think he would be the kind of the go-to guy everybody would want to play with. He's got a pretty solid resume. He's got it all because he's got a solid resume to this point. He's an older guy, so there's less like variables. I think, I'm not saying he's a top 5 player in the country or anything like that, but I see him in that kind of 92, 93 range where he would be among the best guards in the country, which I feel in real life, that's where he sits.
I mean, he was the number 1 transfer who entered the portal this spring. So I could see that happening. He's a, conference player of the year, was 6th man of the year in his conference a couple years ago. He's got Final Four runs. So yeah, I think I'm right with you there. And that I think I put him down as a 91, 92. So we're kind of right in the same ballpark there. You mentioned Jonas Adu. I'd be interested to see what they did with him. Not a star, but he's an experienced all SEC returning big man. And I think there's a premium on those. So I had him in the 87 to 88 range, but I could be talked into going even a little bit higher on him because, I mean, I think he forms just one of the best, 1-2 punches if we're talking guard and big man in the SEC and maybe the country between him and Nelly Davis.
Well, hearing your numbers on just how few players they really have up there. I mean, if there's 10 guys that are at 90 and above and 15 guys at 88 and or above, I don't think Jonas Adu is one of the top 15 players in the country. I think he's a very good player. I think he has a pretty high floor where the lowest you could probably go would be like 84, 85 range. But I think he's right below that 88 mark of the top 15 players in the country. I'd have him, just like you said, in the 86, 87 range. Sounds about right for me. And I could also be talked into a little bit higher. I mean, if you really think he's going to turn into one of the best big men in the country, which, by the way, you're not crazy for thinking that. I mean, you see the all SEC guy last year. You think he's coming to a little bit more of an offensive-minded system, offensive-minded program, at least these days. I know Arkansas hadn't been lighting it up offensively, but Kentucky had the number 1 offense in the country. I'm just going to assume that Arkansas is going to score the ball a little bit here, and he's going to be surrounded with some top players. I like Jonas Adu a lot. I feel like 87 range kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I noticed, or I think this is right. Did you have DJ Wagner at an 82, or was that just me? Did we have that the same?
Wagner at 82.
Okay, yeah, we were both on the same page there, and he strikes me as that guy on the video games who maybe is you hear the name and you think, oh yeah, sure, he's going to be higher than that, but that's just about right. And he's a guy that's just reliable and always in your starting lineup and just a go-to on the video game as like that secondary playmaking option that you have, those guys are always rated like an 82 right there. I think he fits the mold of that, 10 points per game, 3.3 assists per game as a true freshman. Has some limitations, has some things he needs to work on, but obviously very valuable and very solid. But who I really wanted to talk about with you were two guys in Trevin Brazil and Adu Thiero, who I feel like I would kind of have maybe right in that same range with Wagner for different reasons. In fact, I might have had them both, one of them an 81, one of them an 82. I'd have to go back and look. Here's the thing, though. I think we're going to differ on this because I would actually hear a case for Trevin Brazil to be higher than that because he's more productive statistically over the course of his career, but he's injury prone and that impacts things. Thiero has been a super versatile role player, but he's been a role player and his hype is largely based off projectables. But like you mentioned, he's such a dog on the defensive end. I wonder how that would impact things. What do you think?
Well, I think projection has to kind of come into play a little bit here. And so with Trevin Brazil, it's where it's like if you're just basing it off of what he did last year, Trevin Brazil would be in the low 70s, frankly. And just kind of the product he put out there on the floor as he was trying to recover from injury clearly wasn't the best version of himself and not in the best position to succeed. But yeah, Trevin, I think I texted you earlier today and I said, with Trevin Brazil, you could kind of talk me into anywhere from like 77 to 87. Because
That's why
like,
I split the
we've seen
difference.
the flashes with Trevin Brazil that are certainly look like a, top 20 type of guy in the entire country. There was a time where he was being discussed as a potential first round draft pick. And so that's the kind of skill set you're talking about. I mean, with the 3-point, the size, the athleticism, some shot blocking ability. But I think Adu Thiero checks a lot of boxes. And of course, I'm giving him a little bit of benefit of the doubt of assuming he's going to be a little bit more productive. Statistically, I don't know if he's going to put up 84 overall type of stats, but I think he's an 84 overall type of player. I really do. I
He
think
might be at
defensively,
94 on defense, right?
yeah, but
So,
he would probably be the best defender on Arkansas's roster just on the game, right? And he's got a little bit of that defensive versatility too, where it's not just like the Rudy Gobert interior defender. He would have some good. His athleticism numbers would all be pretty well. The measurables would all be there. I think he's got some interior defending ability. Step out and hit a three here and there, and so he'll get a little bit of a rating for that. And I think also you got to take into account the growth he had as a player from year one to year two. I mean, this is a guy who played under 10 minutes a game as a freshman. Then he takes that next step forward, plays over 20 minutes for Kentucky last year, and was really a key player for them on both ends of the floor. I think I'm not saying he's going to take that big of a leap again as a junior, but you imagine he's going to be a little bit older, a little bit tougher, a little bit stronger, a little bit smarter. And I think he's going to be surrounded by guys to where his role is going to be pretty easy. I think he would be a guy that I have him as my number 3 rated player on the game for Arkansas. And I know a lot of people will be like, what the heck are you talking about, man? But I think he checks a lot of those boxes that you kind of look for. And I feel like guys like him, historically, I'm kind of comparing a lot of this to 2K because that's what we have to go off here. But like, I remember when Draymond Green was like a 90 overall back in the day on 2K, and you look at Draymond Green and you're like, he averages 8, 5, and 3. How did he do that? But it's like, if you just check a lot of boxes and don't have clear deficiencies, the model kind of seems to favor you a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the last of the returners / transfers here is Big Z. And I noticed that we both had him at a 79. And you know how I feel about Big Z, man. I feel like I'm disrespecting my guy, but at the end of the day, folks, he only has about 15 games of college experience under his belt, and he certainly showed some flashes. I think he's got a super high ceiling, but there's not enough of a sample size. He's not enough of a sure thing there for me to go too much higher than that, although I think he is the type of guy who could probably, maybe outplay in real life the rating that he would get on a video game. But now it gets tricky with the freshmen, and we're going to talk about Boogie Flan, Carter Knox, and Billy Richmond here in just a moment on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Folks, we all love going to live events, whether it's a sporting event, a concert, a comedy show, you name it. The memories last a lifetime, and I'm sure you're all excited to make new ones here in the future with the college football and NFL seasons right around the corner. When you're on the hunt for tickets, I'd encourage you to check out the Gametime app. Gametime was my go-to when I lived in St. Louis. I wound up getting a lot of great deals to go check out the Cardinals and even got a nice seat to go watch the St. Louis Blues in the Stanley Cup Finals. if you're looking to head down to War Memorial Stadium next week, for example, there are tickets as low as $29 for Arkansas's opener against UAPB on Gametime. The Gametime app, it's easy to use. It comes with several nice features with curated deals that make it easier to find the best prices on great seats and the option to check out the actual views from your seat before you purchase. Take out the guesswork of buying concert tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today for last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, folks, back here for the final segment on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, the Pod the Palace edition with Andrew Ellis. I'm Curtis Wilkerson. We're doing EA Sports work for them. If they get the itch to recreate that college basketball game with Arkansas's team ratings, player ratings, we've been working our way through them. Now we need to figure out the freshmen and what do we do with the freshmen, because it gets a little bit tricky. I remember playing this game back in the day and recruiting and signing McDonald's All-Americans in my dynasty mode, and then they would arrive on campus and they'd be like a 79 or an 80. I'm like, well, what the heck is going on here, man? It's kind of crazy. Some of the freshmen who were built into the game already were actually a little bit higher than that, but it feels like it really took a generational type talent like a Kevin Durant to really soar up there in the ratings for the youngsters.
Yeah, the video game historically, and even the college football game to this day, like they don't really know what to do with freshmen, because it's like, this Anthony Davis kid, do we really want to throw him a 94 overall? Yeah, you do. But, for an 18-year-old, you don't really want to do that. And so they really don't go higher than that 82, 83, maybe 84, 85 range for these freshmen. I also think back, 2K always had a potential rating, which I always loved, because when you would do a dynasty and you'd sim forward, it'd be like 3 years into the future and you're like, oh, Malik Monk's first team All NBA. Wow. Okay. Just like stuff like that would happen. I think Boogie Flan and Carter Knox would be the type of guys where you have that 90 plus potential, even as freshmen. Both of those guys really lived up to all of the hype and potential that you have there. I could be talked into those guys being way higher. I feel like Carter Knox is the most pro ready, or just ready to compete at this level of the freshmen that Arkansas has. So I have Billy Richmond down a little bit lower in that 76 range. I feel like he's the more raw of the three prospects. I mean, he is literally the youngest, if I remember correctly. But I feel like Carter Knox, just with his 3-point shooting ability, his size, and just his NBA ready body, I feel like he kind of is the guy who would have the highest rating of the freshmen. And I honestly just feel like he's the best overall player. I really love Carter Knox. So I gave him an 83, and that's probably a little generous there. And I had Boogie Fland at 81.
There you go. Yeah, that is interesting. And I agree on a lot of that with Carter Knox. Anybody who's been listening to me knows that I've been trying to be the conductor of that hype train for sure. I do think he's probably the most physically ready for Arkansas. He was a McDonald's All-American, a 5-star by several outlets there. Boogie Flan pretty much consistently, though, was rated ahead of him in all those rankings that you look at. From that standpoint, in my mind, I had him a notch ahead of Carter Knox. I could hear an argument either way. I think I went 81 and 80 with Boogie and Carter Knox. And then I was right in the same wavelength there with you on Billy Richmond as a 76. But it sounds like we have put together, Andrew, a pretty solid team for the Razorbacks. And again, if EA Sports, if they're feeling the pressure right now to try to hurry up and get a game out by November, that way people can enjoy it, just turn to people like us. Let us do the hard work for you and put these rosters together. That's exactly what we did, and it's been fun, and we enjoyed it. And that's going to wrap us up. Another edition here at the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, the Pod at the Palace edition. For Andrew Ellis, this has been Curtis Wilkerson. We appreciate you guys as always. Everyone enjoy their weekend, and we will see you soon.